Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Eddie Marcus here again. I want to do something and take you into my confidence and share with you some things that I've endured and ask you, what do you think? So let me give you a good picture. My mother was a child, and I was raised by some very old people who were directly connected to slavery. But I guess I grew up a pretty good kid. I didn't get into too much trouble, no more than any other youth down in the small towns of Mississippi back in those days. Went to school just like everybody else, and certain things I really loved, like theater and music and stuff like that. Never really had any money. Never had really the time to play the games that kids who had regular parents did. I had to learn how to wash clothes, clean walls, scrub floors. It was all good. I don't complain. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I had some real crazy experiences. A couple of times I had an encounter with death. And each time a miracle happened, and death had to turn me loose. Well, I think about that, ladies and gentlemen. But death was just an expression of what I avoided. But what was I given? I ended up getting a full scholarship to college. Seemed like that was the only way I was going to get there. There probably were other means, but knowing me and my personality, this was great. Ended up getting married early. And then something happened. As I started working for the Veterans Administration in Chicago, I started seeing a different kind of poverty. You know, the poverty of the South, living in Mississippi, cotton fields and shotgun houses. You know, they look through the front door, look straight out through the back. Well, that was normal. But when you're living in a city, the big city, you've always imagined that these were the places that everybody wanted to be. And now here you are in the midst of it with a darn good job. And what do you see? Ghetto. Ghetto. Struggles, pain, suffering. Oh, man, it was quite an awakening. And the way I try to deal with it is that, having experienced that for a few years, I decided that something had to be done. And since I was raised by real old people and grew up in a church and imagined a God that I hadn't seen operative in the people except once, and that was Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And, well, you know, I'll put it this way. Brothers during that time. There were several. But that's the one time. And other than that, I haven't really seen anything else. I've seen progress made, and I've seen regression made. I've seen us as people of color still in the same boat we were always in. Nothing happening. I see white people suffering. I see the nation suffering. I see all kinds of things suffering. And so I decided to play a part in making the world a better place. I had a gorgeous wife, ladies and gentlemen. And as soon as she found out that I was going to do that, and my first move was to quit the Veterans Administration, stop counseling. I needed some change, so I started washing storefront windows. She thought that was as loony as a loony could be. So she decided to free herself from this Looney Tune. Well, after that, I ended up going into the Navy. It broke my heart, ladies and gentlemen, because even though I know the score, to think that someone would stand before a public and say, I love you to the rest of my life, poverty nor sickness will divide us, and say this in a spiritual sense to God, well, you know, it just blew my mind, but it happened, and I guess it happens all the time. So I went to the Navy, trying to find an outlet to get out of Chicago, where you spend most of your days, if you got nothing to do, drinking bumpy-faced gin. So I decided to volunteer for the Navy, but one of the reasons I wanted to go to the Navy was they had just had the hostage crisis in Iran, and I wanted to get over there in that Persian Gulf area, so if there was going to be any battles, I could be in it. And hopefully, if somebody was going to die on a ship, let me take the place of somebody else, and not let me die. And I wanted that lady that divorced me to get whatever money you get for being in the military and giving your life up. I wanted her to know that. She meant that much to me. Anyway, I didn't get killed. So I ended up stuck in the military for a while. That was okay to travel and see things and do the duties that you were given, but then you start watching and listening to what Ronald Reagan was doing, his programs. Oh, there were people that so infatuated with Ronald Reagan, he was out of sight. But there were so many people they didn't want to see him anywhere because there was a pain and the problems that was created out of the policies that as they were implemented toward others, usually people of color, poor people. Anyway, I decided that I could not wear that uniform out in public, knowing what the United States was representing as far as poor people were concerned, so I stopped taking orders. I just couldn't take orders anymore. I ended up being released from the military, having spent time in the Brigs in the Philippines, some form in Japan. So I was released, came out and started driving tractors in the cotton fields. And a lady saw and heard of me, offered me a job at Mississippi Valley State University, recruiting students into college. It was a pretty good time. And then I met this other girl. She was wonderful, man. I mean, she wasn't like anybody I had dealt with before. She was absolutely wonderful. And so met her for a while, kind of imagined her being my wife. And so I turned Valley aloof because she had been visiting Minnesota. In fact, living in Minnesota, so I thought that was the place I better be. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening here? I had an inspiration that says there's something wrong with the society. There's something wrong with the church. There's something wrong with the people in this country that allow all of this time, all of this pain and suffering that individuals must go through. It was absolutely out of this world. God wanted me to do something about it, told me to do something about it, and that's why this thing started, I guess, the whole life. Anyway, I decided that the move to make was to travel across the country on faith. That means without money. Believing that I can get across this country and share the message that I had been given. And ladies and gentlemen, I did that several times. But it was rugged. And I want you to know that the reason that I was given this particular mission to travel across the country is so that I could learn a lesson. I learned a great lesson. And I put it in a book called American Christians on the Path to Hell. And I kind of wanted to spice it up a little bit for those who don't want to spend time putting Christians down. And I did a portion called A Walk Through Life from Hell to Paradise. And things never change, ladies and gentlemen. I'm struggling, trying my best to see if I can wake people up. Now, you don't know what this thing about how God wants this plan of life to operate. I haven't shared that with you here. I mean, I had it on previous videos. It's on Facebook and YouTube. But for the most part, I had been given that information. So I know the way to peace. I know the way to prosperity. I know the way to freedom. I know the way to joy of our dreams. I know the way of fulfilling our every dream. I know the way, plain and simple. I know how to live. No one will have to lie, cheat, and steal, and kill, and create hatred, and bigotry, and racism. See, all of these things come from a false precept, a false concept of life and what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, according to this, is that the white man in America is God. It might be the white man is God all over the land. But see, to be awakened, you know that you can't see God. It's invisible. You can't see who created the earth. You can't see who created the sky. You can't see who created humankind. But it exists because it's here. You know it wasn't a human being. So if you know that, then you give your power, you give your allegiance to that power you can't see. You allow that power to live in you. And there's nobody bigger than you or me but that power. Well, this is what the message that I've brought to the people. But ladies and gentlemen, the thing that made it so obvious is that I believe in 1988, and every time thereafter for at least three or four seasons, I ran for president of the United States. And the only thing I advocated was the love of God that everybody learns about in the Bible. And it wasn't tricky. like these various denominations that you have talking about they're Christians and they are better than everybody else. No, this wasn't tricky like that. You see, in this, everybody had their needs met, their wants, their desires, and their needs. They had them all met. In this program, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, no one was ever hungry. No one was ever without shelter. No one is ever without education. No one is ever without health care. And no one is ever without a career of their own choosing in this program. Oh, man, I took it out every presidential season. My wife is, oh, here you go again. And see, my method, ladies and gentlemen, of trying to get the reach you was to tell you something so great, so dynamic, like this stuff that you hope for, this stuff you've been dreaming for ever since you was a kid, ever since you were a little kid looking at magazines. You've been dreaming about a life like that, and I don't care how old you are right now. If you're living, you could be 150. You've been dreaming for a life like this. And here it is. I'm bringing you the message about a life like that, and it's so easily attainable. You know what? No one was interested. Not one Christian, not one family member, not one friend, not one anybody was interested in that. No matter what I did to promote it. Nobody put any money behind it, never. Neither did I ask anybody, because a message like this, if I hear it, I'm so happy, I'm telling everybody I hear about it, and I'm trying to gain interest into that so I can play a part to make sure that it really happens. So I'm thinking this will happen to everybody else too. But no, my friends, none of that happened. Each time I ran for president, it never happened. I'm so in love with you till I commit crimes, go to jail and prison, trying to get a message and to authenticate a message to you. For what good? Mine, not yours, because you turn your back on it. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when came back and you found out that George Floyd represented the power structure of this nation, that his murder represented that. It represented that by the white structure. It represented that by the military post, by the uniform he had on, telling you that what it represented. It represented that because it was a people of color. And you should have seen the way this guy did it. I mean, he just made it like black people don't mean a thing. But anyway, that was a message. Most people didn't get it. And then, ladies and gentlemen, that was just part of it. Everything that you've been taught that was evil and low down and dirty came along in Donald Trump, and they made it president of the United States. I mean, what I thought you were going to do to lift up God's plan, man, every time Donald Trump opened his mouth, there was a camera. Clicker, 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 all day and all night. Clicker, clicker, clicker. Whatever he might say, clicker, 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 clicker. And it was fed to the American public just like rain. I mean, it doesn't even rain that much. Rain simply stops sometimes, but not this. For 4.5, almost 5 years, Donald Trump, blacker, 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 and he was a liar. Everything that you were taught that represented evil, and you loved it. So, considering all of this, it is plain and it is clear that this can be very indicative that not only America, but the world is on the path to hell. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, having shared what I've shared with you right now, think about it. Tell me, what do you say? Respond, if you will. What do you say? Someone needs to know. Until next time, goodbye.